he started preaching to a few people in his immediate close associates and family. Now, it became a political issue who became the first Muslim. So Sunni Muslims such as myself say Abu Bakr, who became the first caliph 23 years later, was the first Muslim. Where the Shia say Ali, who was only about 10 years old at the time, became the first Muslim. And another third tradition says Zayd ibn Haritha, the Prophet's adopted son and freedman, became the first Muslim. Since Zayd had no party that he left behind him, that could promote his interests, it would seem that the attribution of that to him is not improbable. Also, it fits the idea that he preached to his immediate family first, because no one was closer to him than Zayd.
Why not his wife?
Oh, his wife is first, definitely. The first male Muslim, sorry. His wife is the first, and then this is something like sacred history, see. And so he preached that to people privately, but for about 3 years, the message was only preached privately to his family and his friends also. So Abu Bakr became a Muslim then, and there's a list of early Muslims. And many of the prominent people who became prominent later are on that list and so on. Then in about the year 612, he gathered the Meccans together and stood up and said, I want to say something to you. And he started warning them, and they said, is this what you called us together for? And so they were very offended by that. And they felt also that his preaching was bad for the pilgrimage business and would alienate people, because he'd go out and preach to the pilgrims that came from other places in order to try to collect followers. Now, it's very interesting that this is the case, because undoubtedly there's this religion arose in this place that is, on the level of institutional organization of something like a pre-modern Indian pueblo, that a prophet would arise and that there would be so much history in it. And, well, remember, we often have a prejudice against primal cultures, imagining, oh, those are all unchanging and historyless, whereas we have history, we are dynamic people, we are historical actors, and they don't do anything. And of course, that's wrong. Just because we have literacy and can write stuff down doesn't mean that other peoples didn't have prophets and a very complicated ideological and religious history. And if you study the history of the Hopi Indians, for example, I've read about 10 books on the Hopi Indians, that's manifestly evident that they had this huge history, albeit much of it is only traces left through oral tradition today. But you can see that there was a lot going on all the time, and there was not something like Aboriginal stability where things just were the same, and generation came and generation went, and everything remained as it was. Things were constantly in flux. That's one of the reasons why our history is so hard to find out and to teach, because when we start teaching civilizational history based on literacy and writings, we're not teaching the beginning of anything. We're teaching something that already has thousands of years of tradition behind it. When we talk about ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, there's thousands of years before they were able to write anything, and we don't know anything about, but a lot of stuff was happening anyway. Okay. So he preached to the people and was largely rejected during the Meccan period. That was the main message of that period, the Meccan period. He went through what largely amounted to a rejection and got some followers. Nevertheless, the religion was organized along lines of a small apocalyptic religious community, which would bear comparison even to the Qumran community of the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example, although that community had a lot more literacy and cultivation of scripture and so forth.